All right, get ready because today we're going deep into some pretty unique spiritual wisdom. We've got excerpts from a spiritual gathering, I think it was just last week, and some commentary that goes along with it. It really adds another layer. What I found interesting is this material claims it's the authentic take on an ancient tradition. It even says that things we think of as part of that tradition, like holy, weren't there originally.
Yeah, and to get why they say that, we got to look at what this source uses as its basis, the Gita. They're arguing that the Gita and the teachings in it, that's the real heart of this old tradition, and that other practices maybe came later or kind of went off in a different direction.
So that's why they're focusing on Trimurti Shiva Jayanti as a true festival, right?
Exactly. According to this source, this festival marks a huge moment. A divine kingdom gets set up here on Earth. And Shiva, a central figure in all this, he comes to guide people towards that kingdom through Raja Yoga.
Okay, so it's not just a celebration, it's like a turning point in the whole spiritual story. And they're really big on studying these teachings to reach that kingdom.
Oh, definitely. The source says that studying deeply lets us grow spiritually and even reach a higher level, like becoming royal is what they call it.
I see. So royalty isn't about power in the world, but about having divine qualities.
Right on. It's about changing from the inside, developing things like purity, sweetness, knowing yourself, and the deep understanding of karma, that whole cause and effect thing.
And this is where the source gets super interesting. They compare this ideal to how some people act today, people who say they're spiritual. They even suggest that people from, well, lower social classes often act better.
That's a pretty sharp point they're making, right? They seem to be saying that what you do should match what you believe. True spirituality, according to this source, it's not about looking good on the outside. It's about being pure inside and doing the right thing.
And a lot of this seems tied to their idea that we're in the Iron Age now, a time when things are impure and kind of falling apart.
Right, if we look at the bigger picture, they're saying the world's in a bad state, and that knowing about spiritual stuff is the key to changing ourselves and eventually the world.
So this goal of becoming Lakshmi and Narayan is like reaching the highest point of that change.
Precisely. It means getting to a place of total prosperity and being righteous. And the source says we do this by purifying ourselves and developing those divine qualities we were talking about.
Now, this next part, I gotta be honest, it kind of threw me off. They seem to be saying that knowledge and science are basically the same as Holi, the Festival of Colors. I never would have thought of that.
It is a surprising comparison. But I think what they mean is that knowledge and science, if we understand them the right way, they can help us grow spiritually. They can help us burn away stuff from the past that's holding us back. Sort of like how Holi is about symbolically burning away negativity.
So they're not saying to reject knowledge and science, but to see them through a spiritual lens.
Exactly. They could be used for material progress and spiritual progress, which is a really interesting way to look at it.
And speaking of holies, they have a whole different interpretation of the festival itself.
Yeah, instead of it being about fun and celebration, they're saying Holi should be seen as us symbolically getting rid of the past. It fits with how much they emphasize moving forward and not getting stuck on past mistakes. It's all about making spiritual progress faster.
That idea of letting go of the past is powerful stuff. And it connects to this much bigger idea they keep bringing up, the world cycle.
Yes, and this is where things get really interesting, even mind-bending. They talk about this repeating pattern in the world, this kind of drama that happens over and over. Souls go through 84 births, going back and forth between heaven and hell. They say that if we want to break free and get to a state of real peace, we have to understand this cycle.
It's a pretty big idea that we're all part of this huge cosmic play, and what we do decides how our journey goes.
And it makes you wonder, if this world cycle really exists, what does it mean for how we live our lives today?
A lot to think about. But before we go too deep into that, let's get into how this source says we should navigate this whole world cycle thing.
Well, one thing they stress is detachment. We got to detach from the old world and all the appealing stuff it offers. Instead, we should focus on the home of peace through remembering the Supreme Being.
So we're shifting our focus from the outside world, which is temporary, to our spiritual reality on the inside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about remembering who we really are as souls and connecting with that peaceful place inside us.
They even say we should limit how much we interact with the world, to avoid getting dragged into all the negativity.
Yes, it's all about putting spiritual growth first instead of getting distracted by worldly stuff. Real change, they say, happens on the inside, not through rituals or changing society.
So it's not about fixing the world, but fixing ourselves.
It's more about looking at the world from a place of inner peace, being detached.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about what they call being body conscious, like being aware of our thoughts and actions and how they affect ourselves and others.
Right. It's about cultivating a state of peace and love within ourselves, and then that naturally flows out to everyone around us.
This is a lot to take in. We've covered some really deep stuff, and there's still more to explore.
Oh, we've barely scratched the surface of this material. There's a ton of fascinating insights waiting for us to discover. It's really interesting how much this source stresses an active approach to spirituality. It's not just about changing yourself, it's about helping others on their path too.
You're right. They use this striking comparison. People who don't do that kind of service are like horses without riders or just foot soldiers.
hmm
No direction, no real impact.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're saying real spiritual growth means sharing these teachings and helping other people wake up to their own potential.
And they call the people who are really good at that Maharathi. What does that even mean?
Well, Maharathi refers to like a super skilled warrior or maybe a charioteer in those old Indian epics. Someone who's not just a master strategist, but also a strong leader on the battlefield.
So, like a spiritual warrior, leading others to victory over like their inner challenges.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. They lead by example, inspiring others just by how they've transformed themselves. But, even the most dedicated spiritual seekers can hit bumps in the road, as the source says.
Right. They say even people who are progressing well can get thrown off by Maya, all the illusions and temptations of the material world.
Yeah, and they use another interesting term, B-tail, to describe those who lose their spiritual focus.
Meat tail, those are like ghost figures from the old stories, right? Known for possessing and controlling people. So are they saying that when we lose our spiritual connection, we become vulnerable to those negative influences?
That's a really insightful connection. It definitely emphasizes how important it is to stay connected to that spiritual source, especially when facing all the challenges of this world.
This source is really clear that its teachings are unique. They even contrast them with other ways of interpreting the Gita. There's a part where they criticize people who claim to be children of God without really understanding what that means.
Yeah, it definitely presents a distinct and, in its view, the authentic path. They point out how ironic it is that people pray for peace without getting where real peace comes from, which they believe is the supreme being.
It's a powerful call to action when they speak directly to the listener, urging them to become body conscious and detach from the old world.
It is. It's like saying, hey, you have the power to choose your path. You can stay stuck in this cycle of suffering, or you can break free and experience true liberation.
But how do we actually do that? Like, what are the actual steps?
Well, the source puts a lot of emphasis on remembrance, like constantly keeping our spiritual goal in mind. And like we've talked about, being careful about how much we interact with the world so we don't get pulled back into all the negative stuff.
So, not complete isolation, but engaging with the world in a more conscious way, with detachment.
Exactly. Finding that balance between our spiritual practice and our responsibilities in the world.
And they mention that this path is free of kapad, which means complications or obstacles.
Right. They're highlighting how simple and direct this path is. No rituals, no complicated doctrines. It's all about building that direct connection with the Supreme Being through remembrance.
And it seems like they're saying that this connection is what unlocks real happiness and fulfillment.
Yeah. They compare those temporary pleasures of the material world to the lasting joy you get from spiritual awakening. They even compare the spiritual inheritance we get from the Supreme Being to the worldly inheritance from our parents, emphasizing the huge difference in value.
So in the end, it's about shifting our priorities from material things to spiritual things.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're not just physical bodies, but souls, and then investing our time and energy in that spiritual potential.
This material paints a really compelling picture of the spiritual journey. It acknowledges the challenges, but also offers solutions.
It does. It recognizes how tempting Maya can be, and how even those who are really dedicated can stumble. But it also gives us a powerful antidote.
Which is?
Sneha, or love. They talk about developing love for the Supreme Being as a way to stay connected to our spiritual source. They even say that Sneha is the easiest way to remember our goal and get past obstacles.
So love is like the ultimate weapon in this spiritual battle.
It seems that way, yeah. It's the force that ties us to the Supreme Being and gives us the strength to keep going.
That's a beautiful concept. But if this path is so simple and direct, why do you think so many people have a hard time following it?
That's a question people have been asking for a long time. Maybe it's because of how strong the pull of the material world is,
Hmm.
or the desire for instant gratification. Maybe it's just hard to stay focused in a world full of distractions.
Yeah, it's like even with the best map, the journey still takes effort and determination.
For sure.
Oh.
But as this source keeps reminding us, the rewards are definitely worth it.
One thing that really stands out to me is how much they emphasize inner transformation. It's not about changing the world, but about changing ourselves.
Exactly. It's about becoming the change you want to see, right?
Right. And they suggest that this inner transformation shows up in how we act, how we treat people.
Yeah, they talk about cultivating metha, or sweetness, in our interactions with others.
So it's not just about being pure inside, it's about letting that purity shine through in what we say and do.
Exactly. It's about becoming living examples of peace and love, which naturally influences those around us.
This material is packed with wisdom and guidance, like a roadmap for not just our spiritual lives, but for our whole existence.
It offers a unique perspective on what it means to be human and where we fit into the grand scheme of things.
And it reminds us that we're not alone on this journey. We have the support of the Supreme Being and the guidance of these teachings to help us find our way back home.
A powerful message of hope and empowerment for sure.
But there's one concept we haven't really dug into yet: the world cycle. It comes up throughout the material, but it's not always clear what it means or how it affects our lives.
Ah, yes. The world cycle, a complex and fascinating idea, definitely worthy of its own deep dive. It's all about understanding the repeating patterns we see in history, the rise and fall of civilizations, the journey of souls through time.
Color me intrigued. Let's unravel that world cycle mystery in our next segment. All right, so let's try and understand this world cycle thing. They keep saying it's like a big cosmic play, with different acts and themes that keep coming back.
It is a fascinating concept, right? And we're not just actors in the play, we're the audience too, experiencing it all from our own perspectives.
Hmm.
This source specifically talks about a cycle of 84 births, with souls going between heaven and hell.
84 births, that's a really specific number. Is there a reason for that?
It's an important number in this tradition. It represents a complete cycle of experiences, like trying out every possibility in this cosmic drama. It's like each soul has to go through a full set of lessons and challenges before getting back to that original state of purity.
So it's not just about being born and dying, but about how a soul grows over many lifetimes.
Exactly. Every time we're born, it's a chance to grow, learn, and refine our qualities. We go from higher states of consciousness, like what they symbolize with heaven, to lower states, symbolized by hell, and then back up again.
Sounds like a wild ride. But if this keeps happening, how do we ever get off?
That's the big question, right? How do we break free from this cycle of birth and death and reach liberation? The source says understanding the cycle is the first step. When we see the patterns, the causes and effects, then we can start making choices that lead us towards getting free.
So knowledge is power, even on a cosmic level. The better we understand the game, the better we can play it.
Exactly. But it does make you wonder, if the world cycle is all planned out, if our souls are meant to go through these experiences, do we really have free will?
That's a huge question. Getting pretty philosophical now.
We are. And the source talks about this too. They say there's a big plan, but we also have the power to choose within that plan. It's like the script is written, but we can improvise our lines.
So it's about destiny and free will working together.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. We can choose what we do, what we think, how we react to things, and those choices affect how we move through this cycle.
That's actually pretty empowering. It's not about being controlled by fate. It's about actively participating in our own evolution.
Exactly. It's about taking responsibility for what we choose and understanding that everything, good or bad, helps us grow.
So even the hard times, the hellish parts, they're there for a reason.
Yes, it's not about punishment. It's about learning, refining our understanding, and ultimately helping us break free.
Wow, that changes how you look at challenges, doesn't it?
It does. It's about seeing the bigger picture, understanding the whole tapestry of existence, and where we fit into it.
So if we want to break free from this cycle, what does that actually look like? What is liberation?
They describe liberation as a state of peace, a real lasting peace. It's like going back to our original purity, reuniting with the Supreme Being.
Sounds amazing, like pure bliss and fulfillment.
It does. And they say it's not something that just happens after you die. We can experience it right now in this life through spiritual practice.
So it's not about running away from the world, but about going beyond the limits of our ego and connecting with who we really are.
Right. It's realizing we're not just these bodies, we're eternal souls on this huge journey of evolution.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We started with spiritual teachings and social commentary, then got into historical claims and cosmic cycles. It's been a lot.
It really is amazing how all those pieces fit together, creating something so rich and complex.
I have to say, this world cycle idea, it really makes you think, makes you question everything you thought you knew about life, death, reality, all of it.
It does. And it gives us so much to think about. If this cycle is real, if our souls have lived countless lives, what does that mean for us right now? What lessons have we brought with us? What choices will we make to shape our journey from here?
Big questions for sure, and something for all of us to think about as we keep going on our own paths. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into spiritual wisdom. We'll see you next time for another exploration of the fascinating world of knowledge and ideas.